What is up, everybody? It's Dr. Vibe here, host and producer of the award winning Dr. Vibe show. As always, I like to say you're blessed, highly favored, a magnet for miracles, and a solution for someone's problem. Also, know that I'm a certified empowerment coach and president and CEO of Express Your Vibe Coaching Communications. And remember, the Dr. Vibe show is the home of Epic Conversations, and I am the host of Epic Conversations. And there's an old song by, I think it's Bad Company. I think it is called Can't Get Enough of Your Love. Well, we're not talking about love here, but here's a gentleman, Jim Kennedy, can't get enough of the Dr. Vibe show. He is here. Man, I think if I take a look at number of times a person's been on in a space of 30 days, I think he has set the record. So I must be doing something good because someone wants to come back all the time. So it's
We're
all
having
good.
fun.
He enjoys it, we enjoy it, the audience enjoys it. So hey, he's back again. For those who don't know, Jim is a leadership guru with over 28 years of leadership experience and has served in management positions at various levels within the federal government, in the United States, and in private industry. He holds a bachelor and master degrees in business as well as a graduate certificate in project management. He now spends his time writing and speaking on the topics of leadership and development and is also a licensed realtor recruiter with Keller Williams Realty. You can follow him on his website, Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. He's been on the Sunday night roundtable that we do live called Do You Know What Time It Is? He was on last week where he laid down some serious stuff and just shared some of his epic story and we had an epic conversation with him, and he's back again today. And also he's also featured on the Good Men Project and the Huffington Post, so you can't forget that either. So we'd like to welcome again Jim Kennedy. How are you today?
I'm doing wonderful. It's a nice, beautiful day here in Central Texas. It's only about 72 today. It's supposed to only get up to about 77. So for us, that's a cool day.
Only. We're here in,
Only.
yeah, we're here in Toronto. It's about 45 degrees and rain. We're supposed to be getting rain from now until Sunday, and even Sunday they're calling maybe for some snow.
Oh my
So
goodness.
yeah, so it's the way the Toronto rolls. As I tell people, oh, snow this time of year. I said, you're in Canada, get real, right? So this is all good. But Jim is back, and we're continuing a series of conversations. And this week, Jim wants to share about a great article he wrote for the Good Men Project called "Fathers Are Critical to a Child's Education." So, Jim, what gave you the impetus to write this article?
Well, as I shared last time that I was on your show, and thank you very much for inviting me back. And we talked about understanding your purpose, and I said that I had three children, and my oldest is 17, and then we have a 13-year-old and a 12-year-old, and my oldest is surviving triplet who's deaf with cerebral palsy, but my younger two, we actually adopted a few years ago from an island in the Caribbean called St. Vincent and the Grenadines, just south of Barbados. And when they came to the United States, when we adopted them, before then, their schooling and their education wasn't really, let's say, wasn't really where it should be. Uh, Especially my youngest daughter, she was getting some pretty low marks. And fast forward about 3 years, and right before I wrote the article, we got a her latest report card, and she got all A's. And I remember I was talking with a gentleman that was saying who knew my daughter's story, and said, how in the world did you do that? And I said, well, it's because we are involved in the school, and we're involved in the school with all of our children. And I went on to say that we do have excellent relationships with all their teachers. We are known commodities. We participate in the various committees at the school, but I said it's because we're present and because of the fact that we have high expectations of all of our children as well as we hold them accountable. And we said it in essence that is the key. That was the key. And the gentleman said, you really need to write about that. And because a lot of people really need to hear about the fact that not only is it important for moms to be involved in the school, but it's important for dads to be involved too. And so I wrote the article, and the my editor at the Good Men Project just said, "No, yeah, we want this. We really want this." And so it was posted last Saturday, and it's gotten a lot of views and a lot of shares on Facebook and Google and Twitter. And so it seemed like there was something that really resonated with people. So I wanted to come on and talk about it a little bit with you.
Excellent. I'm just gonna FYI you on something. Your microphone is hitting your shirt collar.
Okay, thank
So
you.
if there's any way you can avoid, because it's when it does, it's sort of making a clicking sound. So just an
Okay.
FYI on that, because it's just wanted to inform you, because we both want to make sure that the audience gets the best audio as possible. So no problem with that. So thanks and appreciate that. Let's roll back though. How much were your parents involved in your education?
My parents were. I learned everything that I know on holding kids accountable and having high expectations and things like that from my parents. My parents were very involved in my education. My dad, even though he was for the first 13 years of my life, he was actually in the military. He was in the United States Air Force. And so there were times that he would have to leave, but he would always make sure that he was communicating with the teachers as well as my mom. And so while my mom worked as well, my mom had a full time job, both parents worked. And while they may not have been the class parent, if you will, where they were up at the school every day in the homeroom or what have you, they were always involved. They always made sure that they understood what was going on. They kept up with what was going on. They communicated with my teachers very frequently to make sure that I was doing what I was supposed to be doing. And and so they held me accountable. And the biggest thing that I got from them, they would always say, "Hey," especially as a young a black kid, learning what was going to be required of me later on in life, they really kind of coined the phrase, "You got to be twice as good to get half as much." And their point was, even if somebody says, "Well, this is good enough," it's not good enough. And you have to hold yourself to a higher standard. And so my dad would always say, "Well, if you want to have this nice life, or the things that you dream about, it's not just going to happen for you. You got to work for it." And as a famous person, I think it was Debbie Allen, on Fame said, "Well, you know what? Fame costs, and now's when you got to start paying." And so for me, it was I had to start paying in school and to get to where I wanted to be.
Well, when you were in your early stages of being married, because you didn't have kids till a little bit later on in your career,
Right.
did you start framing some ideas of what kind of parent you wanted to be in regards to teaching your children education, or did you learn as you go in regards to that?
I think you learn as you go, because for me, just like a lot of people, while my dad was no nonsense when it came to education. My mom was too, but my dad really was no nonsense, and he would ride me a lot of times. And I think, when it comes to ways of motivating, he was fairly ingenious. He was a psychologist without the psychology degree, but and so a lot of times I say, when I grow up, or, when I'm older, or I have kids, I don't necessarily want to do what my parents did. And just like most other people, you do, very similar things to what your parents did when you actually were became a when you become a parent. But no, the I had thoughts of how I would raise my child, but because of how when we became parents, the tragic situation that unfolded when we became parents, where we thought, okay, I was going to have a nice little easy, we're going to have an easy ride here as a parent, or we weren't going to have any issues or any difficulties. It was just going to be a normal, I was going to raise a normal child. Well, that went out the window, especially because of the fact that my oldest daughter was born uh, 3 months premature. My oldest daughter was born 24 weeks, 6 days. And so she spent a lot of time, she spent those 3 months in the NICU. For those that don't know what a NICU is, it's a neonatal intensive care unit. It's the intensive care unit for babies. And so she spent about 3 months in there fighting for her life. And then we found out, oh, she's deaf, and oh, she possibly has cerebral palsy. And we know that she does now have a mild case of cerebral palsy. And so the things that you would read in the typical the books, like what to expect when you're expecting and things like that, that stuff went out the window. And so and even our pediatrician said, you might as well just put that book down, because the only thing it's going to do is frustrate you. So while we were able to, our learning on being a parent came really by the seat of our pants, but also doing a lot of research on different, like premature babies, uh, deafness, because my daughter's the only deaf child in the family, cerebral palsy, all those things we had to learn, and we had to learn on the fly and adapt on the fly. And so, in addition to writing for the Good Men Project and the Huffington Post, I'm also an author, and I wrote the book Discerning God's Purpose: A Father's Journey from Tragedy to Triumph. And I really talk about how the start in life for my oldest daughter, and that really kind of prepared us for, even when we adopted our youngest two children, it really kind of prepared us for uh, a life of parenting somebody who's not a typically developing child. Because our youngest two children, they did have educational delays and developmental delays, and so we just said, hey, we got to roll with the punches.
That is good stuff. Oh my goodness. Well, let's get into this wonderful article. And you had, well, let's put it this way. What have you actually done? Just one or two ways. Okay, let's go through some of the points here in the article. So, no, I'm gonna go. What have you done as a parent to have your children succeed education wise? And the second part of that, is any of that different than what you were given by your parents?
Um, we hold we the key is to have high expectations and to hold your children accountable. And while that's the same as my parents did when I was growing up, it's a little bit different when you have a child who has special needs. And a lot of time people will say, well, don't expect too much out of your child, because, like in our case, our daughter, when she was deaf, they said, your daughter will only be able to read at the fourth grade level, or your daughter will never walk. And we said, no, no, no. We're not going to have low expectations. Our job is to prepare Julia, my oldest daughter. Her name is Julia, and our other children as well. After they came along, Lesroy and Nelia. Our job is to prepare our children for whatever assignment that God has for them, and that's literally our mission. And so we say, in order to do that, you have to be the best person that you can be. I don't expect a genius. I don't expect perfection. I just expect you to do your best. That's what we tell our children. And that's the same advice the same instructions that I got from my parents. They expected me to do my best. If my best was a C and I gave it everything I had, I did extra homework. I went to the teacher. I had tutoring. If that was the best that I could do, so be it. However, if if I was getting if I was even getting, let's say, a B, and I really wasn't working, I wasn't doing anything, my dad would get upset because of the fact that he would say you're not doing your best, and it wasn't that he was upset about a particular grade, or he was looking for a particular grade. He was expecting me to do my best because later on in life, um, and as I know now, now that I've grown up, you always have to do your best because it's not about the grade; it's about doing your best and living the best life that you can. So, the answer to your question is twofold. Yes, there are some of the things that I learned from my parents, but also because of the fact that people may not expect as much from a child with special needs. Not only do we have to tell our children to expect the best, but we also have to tell the teachers that no, you need to, we expect the best not only out of our children, but out of you as well. So when you show up at the school, when you go to parent teacher conferences, when you um, uh, have a when you communicate with your child's teacher, when you look at the grades on a daily basis, and I'm talking about where now everything is available online, so you can see the progress every day. You know when your child is slipping, and to make sure that they know that you're paying attention as well, both the child as well as the teacher and the administrators. So that's key for us.
Good stuff. Well, let's break it down a little bit in regards to some of the things that you are doing with your children. So the first thing, well, the benefits. Let me say the benefits for this extra attention. And before we even go there, is there an approach that's different with your oldest child compared to the other two?
I hold all three of I hold them to the same standard of doing their best, but I don't. What I do is I treat them all individually. My daughter is motivated by things that, let's say, my middle child, my son, isn't motivated by. So it's really understanding the child and understanding what motivates them and how to get them to being their best. So while I hold them to the same standard, I treat them all individually. And
Okay.
so that's, for us, that's key because every person is not, they're not robots. They're not the same. You have to treat them individually so that you motivate them individually and also you can get the best out of them individually.
Excellent. So let's look at the first way that this extra attention or this attention has benefited your children when it comes to education. The first thing you mentioned was extra attention. How has
Yep.
that benefited?
Well, the one thing about it is when kids are in school, and you probably know this as well. Even I don't know how it is in Canada, but I can say in the United States, school budgets are reducing, and in the United States Congress right now, they're debating the latest budget for the federal government. And part of that has to do with schools as well. And in Texas, we also they're finishing up their legislative session, where they allocate money, across the state government, including education. And it's just a fact of life that schools are being asked to do more with less. And so, in addition to that, you have, I should say, going along hand in hand with that, you actually have schools that the class sizes are increasing. So, whereas maybe when you and I were growing up, average class size might have been 20 kids. Now it's 30, 35, even some classes are even larger than that. And so your child can get lost if you allow that. But by being a presence, maintaining that presence in the school, by making sure that the teachers know that you are interested in your child's education, then your child typically will get extra attention. I got a funny story for you. When my all of my children went back to school this past fall, and my daughter's a junior in high school. And the school that she goes is a school for the deaf here in Texas. And what happens is the day before they start classes, all the kids come from all over the state. It's a statewide school, so you have some kids that live in the dorms, and some kids that live locally that actually go back and forth on a daily basis. And obviously, my daughter goes back and forth on a daily basis. And so we actually they schedule the day before you go back to school. You end up having time where not only to register the kids, but also to go to meet their teachers. And the funny part about it is, since my daughter has been in high school, we've been the only family, the only parents to show up for that back to school parent teacher conference. And also with our middle school kids, because there's so many kids in school, it's like, sixth, seventh, and eighth. And I think they got over like 1,200 kids in the school. And so back to school time is you literally have about 5 minutes in the classroom with the teacher with however many other parents show up. Sometimes, you get a number of parents that show up, but you don't really have time to have individual conversations. So one of the things that we do is we schedule a time where we can actually sit down and talk to our they teach in teams. So we ask to see the teams for both of our kids, and we actually have a conversation just to talk about our child. And that's a rarity. Not too many people actually do that. And so and the other part that's really funny is when I typically show up in the school, it really kind of takes the teachers and the administrators a little bit by surprise. So when they see a male or a parent in the school, and especially a black male in the school, when they're interested and they're talking about their children, it really kind of makes them take notice. So when we actually participate in the school and they notice that we were there, they say, "Oh, we know who your child is." And so they work a little bit extra because they realize that the parent is actually involved and is taking an interest in that child's education. So by me being involved in the school, by me agreeing to serve on different committees, then the teachers, and by me showing up at the parent teachers conferences and things like that, they say, wow, this family is actually interested in their child's education. So, if there's time that the child needs a little bit of extra help, or needs somebody to explain something to them, or what have you, a teacher is willing to spend that time when they know that the parent is involved. But also because the parent is involved, in our case, we're saying, we have high expectations, and it's known to our children that we have high expectations. And so they seek that extra attention. And so when they seek that extra attention and the teachers know that the parents involved, they're more than happy to give that extra attention. They're more than happy to say, we do want to help, Julia or Lesroy or Nelia, because, it's not a waste of our time. So they're more than willing to provide that extra attention.
Fantastic. Your next point that you share in the article is additional resources, and I'm sure this is somewhat related to your first point because, again, funding in education is getting reduced, and where do you pick up the resources slack?
And that's correct, because the resources, when they have extra money for either some iPads or let's say technology things or programs or what have you, you don't have enough. There's not enough resource for everybody in the school, and so one of the things that they do is they say, okay, let's guard these resources and reserve them for the kids that really really need them, and so or that would benefit from them. And so when your child is actually in the school, in the teacher's face, or you're in the teacher's face, and you're talking about, okay, how can my child get better? They think, oh, we have this resource that might be able to help them. Let's see if we can get this. And it's not a we're going to give everybody the resources. It's for those that ask. And like I always like to tell my children, if you don't ask, you don't get. So you start asking for those things, and then all of a sudden they have them. Like with my oldest daughter, because of her mobility challenges, it's hard for her to get across campus. And she will go into from the place where she's dropped off on. She does ride the school bus every day. Places she's dropped off to where the high school is. That's a pretty good walk, and it would take her, extra time to get to the class. And so one of the things that the school did was they said, well, let's go ahead and buy a golf cart so that we can get her from this place to that place quicker. Or if she needs to have a little bit of extra time, we build that into her individual education plan, or as we call it down here in Texas, the ARD. There are extra things that she can get. For example, she had an iPad in middle school, where it's common for the high schoolers to have iPads, but not necessarily the middle schoolers. Well, that's because of the fact that it's harder for her to write, but it's easier for her to type things on her iPad. Well, consent when you have a kid that's trying, and oh, by the way, the kid is making the honor roll and saying that, hey, we need to have this extra, support, or this extra type of software or this program or what have you. When you see a kid that's trying and you have the parents in there that are actually trying and saying, hey, we need to have this, they're more than willing to go that extra, give that extra effort to see and to find those resources to help that child.
Okay, good stuff. Next up, additional opportunities. And I look at this, you with children of color, this is
Yep.
always a challenge getting those additional opportunities. How have you been able to break that barrier?
Well, when we showed interest, one of the things that was really funny when we came to Texas, we moved to Texas 4.5, almost 5 years ago now, for our daughter to attend the Texas School for the Deaf, because we literally did a nationwide search from because she wasn't getting the education that she needed. The expectations were lower at her previous school, and we said, no, no, we want to make sure that she has the opportunity to maximize her, we wanted her to maximize her opportunities. And so we came down here, and one of her struggles was in math. And we ran into she had an excellent teacher her first year, and who really put in the extra time to close her gaps when it comes to her knowledge gaps, and really saw her trying hard and things like that. Well, one of the things that they did here in Texas, they have a STEM program that is available through the Girl Scouts. It's called Tech Girls. And so she was invited to join Tech Girls, and she loved it, no problem. Well, what ended up happening was you had a number of kids that were, some kids were interested, some kids weren't. And the program kind of started waning. So instead of having Tech Girls, they there's a program that was started here in Texas called Chick Tech. It's something. It's a program to introduce girls to technology, and it's a program that's other places in the United States, but this was the first year that they had it in Austin. And so one of the things that happened was that same teacher who taught her, 4 years ago, heard about the opportunity and said, hey, do you think Julia would be interested in this? Absolutely. And so she recommended her for the program. She got into it. The program is free, but they have sponsors with several corporations in town. But what they do is they expose the kids to different type of technology careers. They expose them to different things having to do with technology, like coding and things like that. And they also get to meet people who are doing those jobs right now. And for my daughter, it was really kind of important because she actually met with people who were in the technology field who were also deaf. So it really expanded her horizons to say, oh, I can really do this. My youngest daughter, when she came, they saw that, she had, even though she was challenged with her English and reading and writing, she had an aptitude for science and math. And so they allowed her to go to a science camp, a summer science camp a couple of years ago. And at the within the school district, and she continued to do better. And this year, she actually was had the opportunity to join the science club, which was very competitive within her school. And so, what she's actually doing now is they're doing participating in a science competition, but she's also getting exposed to different types of science activities and science careers, and she's doing the same thing. She's meeting with people from local organizations who are actually acting as judges, but they give them tips and advice and things like that to help them along the way to keep them motivated. So these are the types of opportunities when you see them, you're like, okay, well, big deal. Well, it is a big deal because when you actually look at applying for colleges and universities, it's not just about your grades, it's about your other activities. And when you say, oh, I participated in this activity or that activity, not only does it expose you to or open you up to scholarship opportunities for higher level education, I should say, not only does it open your eyes up to possibilities, but it opens you up to scholarship opportunities, which, as every parent knows, you want to make sure that you have those opportunities so that you don't have to pay out of your pocket for as much for college tuition. But these are things that there are science careers, there are science for careers for people of color that are the opportunities are out there, and you find out about these different scholarship opportunities. It's wonderful, but you wouldn't know about them unless you were exposed to these opportunities in the first place.
Okay, we'll go on to higher results, but there were a few things that you shared there that definitely want to come back to before we let you go. So finally, you talk about higher results.
Um, when you when I show up at a school and you have and you have teachers that are paying extra attention to your child, when you say you have higher expectations and you hold people accountable, and people work hard, naturally you're going to have better results. My daughter, who I said, there was not a lot of in her previous school, they had lower expectations, um, and in some of the cases they actually wanted her to be in a special needs program instead of a regular program. She's here in a regular program. She's pulling in right now about a 3.6 GPA in as a junior in high school, and so she's got the opportunities for scholarships now. And the one funny part about it is she just got finished taking uh, the ACT college entrance exam here in the United States, and she didn't do as great as she wanted to do. But the one thing that she found out in this process was there are a number of schools that she's actually considering that said, you know what, because of your GPA, we really don't need your ACT. You can give it to us if you want to, but also based on her GPA, she's able to qualify for additional scholarship opportunities and things like that. But it started with the expectations that we had. It also started with the fact that it was, because we expected her to do well, we didn't say, we don't expect as much of you. We expect her to do the best that she could. We expected her and we held her accountable. Then she actually started to achieve higher results when the extra help that she got, spending the extra time after school, studying math with the teacher, the extra resources that she got, the iPad, the other things like that, and the opportunities that she was exposed to. that just yielded higher results. She got better grades, and she got, like I said, the additional opportunities. She now is looking at, there are a number of scholarship opportunities that she has, and I firmly believe that she's going to get into the school that she wants, and she's probably going to have a full ride. She's going to have a scholarships to pay for her education, all because of the fact that we actually had higher expectations, and we took the time, and I took the time to go into that school to make sure that she had the teachers were uh, understood our expectations, and the teachers understood that not only did we expect uh, our daughter to try her best, but we also expected her teachers to try her best, and working together, it yielded higher results. So right now, like I said, uh, all of our children are basically on the honor roll. They get A's and B's. I think a couple of times Julie had a C in math because of her the challenge of math this time. But we knew that she was trying her best, and we knew that what she was doing, so it's fine. But overall, she's got A's and B's. She's got a higher GPA. I said that my youngest daughter brought home straight A's this term. This term, I think my youngest children they brought home A's and B's, which was great. And we looked at it and we said, okay, here's where you can improve. Here's where you can do better, and these are the tools that we can provide you, and the school can provide you to do better. They expected, not only when they realized that we expected more of them, they expected more of themselves, and so they were able to actually achieve higher results.
Well, and I know, and our time is running down here, but you, and correct me if I'm wrong, it seems that you've always been in environments where the resources to help your children's education with your and your wife's push impetus has been there. But that's a good case scenario. Many people in America do not have those environments. It sounds like where you can make those efforts and they yield results. What suggestions would you make for those parents or parent that are in neighborhoods, in schools where the resources may not be there or the opportunities aren't as fluent as they may have been? Because you did mention you moved to another state for your
We
eldest daughter.
moved. We moved a number of times for our
Right.
children. My oldest daughter was born in Cincinnati, Ohio, and like I said, the expectation when she was there was, um, it was, hey, she's not going to be able to read above a fourth grade level, or she's not going to be able to walk. And so what we did was we moved, and not only did we moved from Cincinnati to St. Louis for a school program for her. And then we moved to the DC metropolitan area. And then we moved to Texas. And so what we did was we made a decision on the on what was our priority, what was our purpose. And our purpose, like I said, was to prepare her and prepare our children for whatever assignment God has for them. So one of the things that we did was there are times that we moved that we gave up a ton of money in order to make sure that our child had the educational resources that she needed, or the educational opportunity. I won't say the resource, the opportunity. The other thing is, so one of the things that I would suggest is you really have to look at what your purpose is. The other thing that I also say is, uh, there are people that live in neighborhoods that, let's say, the public school is not all that great, but there are additional private schools that are in the area that are much better. And then the question comes, well, yeah, private school, but you got to pay all this money. But a lot of those private schools have scholarships, and I do know of a number of people who have, let's say, have lived in one area of town and have availed themselves to those scholarships. The other thing is, in many districts, you may be assigned to one school, but by going and asking the question, "Hey, I want to have my child in this neighboring school," school districts will, in a number of times will allow that to happen. And so it's a matter of the parent being involved and the parent pushing and the parent asking the question, but also the child demonstrating that they are also helping. They're also doing their part. And when they do, when it's a combination like that, then many times school districts will absolutely make changes to accommodate your child.
Okay. Well, we're going to wind it up there because Jim does have to run, but I think it's an interesting subject conversation we'll need to keep an eye on because, especially in America, the funding for schools is getting reduced, and parents' time sometimes is not the greatest to be able to spend as much time in the role of education in the world of education. And when I was involved there, I looked at education as a triangle. One triangle corner of the triangle is the student, the other triangle is the parent or parents, and the other triangle is the education system. And
Right.
from what I see, they're not equilateral corners right now, and it needs to hopefully get balance because the long-term effects are either going to be very good or very bad.
Agreed. And the one thing that I will say is, you're right. It is not balanced, but the squeaky wheel gets the grease, as the term goes. And if you start making enough noise about your child, about the education of your child, things will happen.
As long as the money and resources are there, though, too. That has to be there also, right?
Money and resources, or if the money and resources aren't where you are, sometimes you got to make decisions that, change is uncomfortable, but sometimes that's the best thing. And I can't speak for everybody's situation, but I can speak that, one of the things about it is because my parents poured into me and kicked my behind when I was younger and made me and held me to higher standards. Now I can do the same. And the benefit is I can now provide, additional, because of my background and because of how I was raised, I can now provide those additional motivation to my children as well.
Well, Jim, as we let you wrap up here, just want to know if you have a final message for parents out there, especially fathers, when it comes to education of their children, and can you give us your contact information?
Sure. Well, first of all, thanks for the time. It is a topic that is of great importance to me. And I know that there are a lot of people out there who will say, "Hey, I don't have the time to do to check in on my child at school or engage the teachers." I respectfully say, you do the things that are of most importance to you, and this is something that is critically important. Our children, especially people of color, children of color, need the educational opportunities. They need that education. Others, education may be nice to have, but for children of color, that is the key. Without it, their life is a whole lot more difficult. So I would say, whatever you do, my message to you is, however you need to be involved. You don't need to be the classroom parent, but all you have to do is communicate with the child. If you work a job where it's hard for you to get off, there are other ways in which you can communicate. There's email, there's other ways to let the teachers know that you are involved. So look at those alternative ways, the different options. Um, I write on a lot of not just leadership and management, but I write on specifically parent involvement, parent leadership, and I write on especially parents of special needs kids. I write to those to the parents of special needs kids a lot, and I try and give the benefit of the experience that I've had, so that share that experience so that others may benefit. You can actually reach me. You can come to my website, jimkennedyleadershipcafe.com. That is the website that where I post a lot of my articles. And I told you about my book, Discerning God's Purpose, A Father's Journey from Tragedy to Triumph. And I'm also a contributing writer to the Huffington Post, as well as the Good Men Project. So there are a lot of ways that you can get a hold of me. But I'm also on Facebook at Jim Kennedy. I'm also on Twitter at JKL Cafe. And I would love to hear from you.
Well, thank you so much, Jim, for taking the time to spend again for another epic conversation. We will have all of Jim's contact information as part of the post that will go along with the replay of this conversation. I am Dr. Vibe. I'm host and producer of the award winning The Dr. Vibe Show. I'm also a certified empowerment coach, president and CEO of Express Your Vibe Coaching and Communications. Three best ways to get in touch with me: Twitter at DRVIBESHOW, email address dr.vibe at the drvibeshow.com, and website address www.thedrvibeshow.com. If you want to check out any of the replays of my epic conversations, go to the website. There's other places you can catch them: iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play Music Store. There's also iHeartRadio, Tuned In Radio, and multiple other places. But the best thing probably to do, just go to your favorite search engine, put in the space dr period space VIBE space show, click enter. I'm very Googleicious, so that's all you need to know. So Jim will be back probably next week for another part of his series of epic conversations with the Dr. Vibe Show. As always, I like to say you're blessed and highly favored. You're a magnet for miracles and you're a solution for someone's problem. As always, thanks for watching live or on the replay. And finally, remember, sometimes you have to get smaller to get stronger. God bless and have a great day.